The notification ping sliced through the quiet like a knife. Samantha's phone screen lit up with a Facebook post, one she wished she could unsee. Her heart dropped as she read the caption under her smiling, glowing maternity photos. Guess she thinks posing in a thrift store dress makes her a goddess. Some women have no shame. It was signed with a mocking emoji, and the username was all too familiar. Her ex-husband, Blake Turner. The post had been shared over 500 times in the past hour, with strangers piling on in the comments. Some laughed. Others made cruel jokes about her weight, her dress, even the way she cradled her stomach. But worst of all, Blake had tagged his new girlfriend, a perfectly manicured Instagram model named Kelsey, in the post. Like the two of them were some kind of comedy duo, roasting the woman he'd once vowed to love forever. The photos had been taken just 2 weeks ago, in a golden field at sunset. Samantha had felt beautiful for the first time in months, soft curls framing her face, the silk of her pale blue gown catching the light as she held her growing belly. The photographer, a friend from college, had captured her in moments of pure joy. That shoot wasn't just about pictures. It was about reclaiming a little piece of herself after the wreckage Blake had left behind. And now, he'd twisted that joy into a public humiliation. She stared at the comments, her stomach twisting. She could feel the baby's gentle kicks beneath her hand, as if sensing her distress. A hot tear slid down her cheek, but she refused to sob. Not again. Not for him. Because Samantha's story hadn't started here. The betrayal, the cruelty, it had roots stretching back to the moment she had first met Blake Turner. It was 4 years ago, at a mutual friend's rooftop birthday party in downtown Chicago. Samantha, then 26, was working as an interior design assistant, hustling between client meetings and late-night sketch revisions. Blake was magnetic, broad-shouldered, quick-witted, with a smile that promised excitement. He worked in sports marketing and seemed to know everyone in the room. From the beginning, Blake made her feel seen. He sent her good morning texts before work. He remembered the details, her favorite Thai place, the exact way she liked her coffee. They went from casual dating to inseparable in months. When he proposed on a snowy evening in Millennium Park, she thought she'd won the kind of love people wrote novels about. But the love story began to unravel almost as soon as the vows were said. Blake's charm, once intoxicating, soured into arrogance. He began spending more nights networking than coming home. He made cutting remarks about her career, about her not thinking big enough. When she told him she wanted to start a family, he laughed and said they should wait until his brand was stronger, like children were just another accessory. When she finally got pregnant, unexpectedly, Blake's reaction had been lukewarm at best. "We'll make it work," he'd said, kissing her forehead while his eyes drifted back to his phone. 3 months later, Samantha found out why he'd been so distant. A notification popped up on her iPad, an Instagram DM from a stranger. It was a screenshot of Blake and another woman in Cabo, his hand low on her waist, his lips brushing her ear. The stranger's message was short. "You deserve to know." The confrontation that followed had been ugly. Blake didn't deny it. He just shrugged and told her she'd been distracted and boring since the pregnancy. When she threw him out, he didn't beg. He packed a bag and moved in with the other woman, Kelsey, the same one now laughing with him online about Samantha's maternity shoot. The divorce had been quick, but not painless. And even after the paperwork was signed, Blake seemed to find ways to jab at her. Petty comments in mutual friends' group chats, passive-aggressive posts about dodging bullets. She'd tried to ignore him. She'd promised herself she would focus on her baby, her career, her healing. But this? Posting her maternity shoot to mock her in front of the world? Tagging Kelsey? This was a new level of cruelty. Samantha closed her eyes, forcing herself to take deep, steady breaths. She would not give him the satisfaction of a meltdown. She knew Blake. He was the kind of man who fed off reactions. He wanted her to be embarrassed, to disappear quietly while he and his Instagram-perfect girlfriend built their little empire of self-importance. Well, she wasn't disappearing. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. "Don't let him get away with this. Call me." She frowned, her thumb hovering over the screen. Curiosity won out, and she typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. "An old friend of your father's, I think it's time you knew the truth." Her father? Samantha barely remembered him. He'd died when she was 8. He'd been a quiet, reserved man, often traveling for work. Her mother rarely spoke of him after his death, except to say he had been a good man, and that was enough. Before she could respond, another text appeared. "Meet me at the Lafayette Cafe at noon tomorrow. I'll explain everything. And trust me, this is bigger than you think." She stared at the screen, torn between suspicion and intrigue. The Lafayette Cafe was in the financial district, a far cry from her quiet suburban neighborhood. She told herself it could be a scam, but something about the tone felt different. Urgent. Real. As she lay in bed that night, the image of Blake's smug face on her phone burned in her mind. She thought of the way he had looked at her during their wedding, all charm and promises. She thought of the way he had laughed when she found the photos from Cabo. And she thought of the baby, growing inside her, who deserved better than a mother crushed under the weight of humiliation. Maybe this meeting was nothing. Or maybe it was the first step towards something she couldn't yet imagine. Somewhere deep down, a spark lit. A spark that had been smothered under heartbreak and exhaustion for months. By morning, that spark had grown into a plan. She was going to meet this mysterious Jay. She was going to hear whatever he had to say. And then, she was going to make Blake Turner regret the day he ever thought mocking her was a good idea. The Lafayette Cafe was the kind of place Samantha had only seen in glossy magazines. Polished marble floors, leather booths, and a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Chicago skyline like a painting. The air smelled faintly of espresso and warm croissants, and every customer seemed to be wearing tailored suits or designer coats. She felt a little out of place in her oversized cardigan and maternity jeans, but she pushed the thought aside. She was here for answers, not to impress anyone. A man in his late 60s rose from a corner booth when she walked in. He had silver hair, sharp blue eyes, and the kind of posture that screamed discipline. His suit was impeccable, his tie a subtle silk pattern. He smiled faintly, though there was an undercurrent of gravity in his expression. "Samantha?" he asked, his voice smooth but deliberate. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "You're Jay?" "Jonathan Pierce," he said, extending a hand. "Your father's oldest friend and his former business partner." Her stomach tightened. My mom never really talked about him." Jonathan gestured for her to sit. "She had her reasons, and I'm afraid the truth is far bigger than you've been led to believe." Samantha eased into the booth, her heart pounding. Jonathan ordered 2 coffees, then leaned in slightly. "Your father, Michael Carrington, wasn't just a quiet traveling consultant. He was the majority owner of Carrington International, a private investment firm with stakes in real estate, tech, and commodities across the globe. At the time of his death, his net worth was in the billions." She blinked, certain she'd misheard. "Billions? That doesn't make sense. We didn't live like billionaires." Jonathan nodded. "Because your mother wanted it that way. After Michael passed, she inherited controlling shares of the company, but she never trusted the board members. Many of them were sharks who would have used you as leverage. So she placed your inheritance in a secured trust under my guardianship until you turned 30 or until certain circumstances arose." Samantha stared at him, trying to process the words. "Circumstances like what?" "Like your name and dignity being dragged through the mud by a man who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as you." His tone sharpened. "Your mother was my friend. She made me promise to protect you. But protection doesn't always mean keeping you in the shadows. Sometimes it means giving you the tools to fight back." She let out a shaky laugh, half disbelieving. "You're saying I'm a billionaire?" "Technically, yes," Jonathan said. "Though you don't have direct access to all of it yet. What you do have is control, majority control, over Carrington International, should you choose to step into that role. And the board would be smart to follow your lead, because I still hold a significant stake myself." Her mind spun. Just yesterday, she was the pregnant woman whose ex had mocked her online for wearing a $60 gown. Now she was being told she could walk into a skyscraper and own it. Jonathan reached into a leather briefcase and pulled out a sleek black folder. Inside are the legal documents confirming your stake, your trust, and the current valuation. "I've kept this from you for years because you were building your own life." But now? He glanced meaningfully at her belly. Now you have more than yourself to protect. Samantha's fingers trembled as she touched the folder. If this is true, why tell me now? Why not wait until I turned 30? Because Blake Turner has crossed a line, Jonathan said, his voice low. Public humiliation, mocking the mother of his child, it's unacceptable. And from what I've seen, you have the grit to use your position not just to defend yourself, but to make sure men like him think twice before trying it with anyone else. She thought of Blake's smirk in that Facebook post. The way Kelsey had posed like she was auditioning for some cruel reality show. The way people had laughed, shared, commented. A slow, unfamiliar smile tugged at her lips. You're right, I'm done hiding. Jonathan's eyes glinted. Good, then there's one more thing you should know. Carrington International's current CEO, Nicholas Hale, is not only brilliant, he's one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. I suspect he'll be very interested in meeting the woman who suddenly holds controlling shares of his company. She almost laughed at the absurdity. You're setting me up with my own CEO? Not setting you up, Jonathan corrected. Introducing you. What happens after that is your business. But Nicholas has a reputation for loyalty to those he respects, and if you want to make a public statement, showing up somewhere with him at your side will send a message Blake can't ignore. Her pulse quickened, not in romance, but in the sense of power. For so long she'd felt like the one who had to quietly endure. Now, the idea of walking into a room and owning it, of turning the tables entirely, was intoxicating. She closed the folder, her decision made. All right, let's set up a meeting. Jonathan's smile was almost imperceptible, but it carried the weight of a man who knew he'd just unleashed something unstoppable. They talked for another hour. About logistics, about timing, about making sure her first public appearance as Carrington International's majority shareholder was calculated and flawless. By the time Samantha left the cafe, the December wind biting at her cheeks, she no longer felt small. She felt dangerous. Blake wanted to laugh at her maternity shoot? Fine. Let him, because soon she'd give him something to choke on. 3 days later, Samantha found herself standing in the private elevator of the Carrington International headquarters. The black folder from Jonathan tucked firmly under her arm. The mirrored walls reflected back an image she barely recognized, her hair pulled into a sleek low bun, a tailored navy dress that hugged her bump without hiding it, and a pair of classic nude pumps. Jonathan had insisted on hiring a stylist for the meeting, and though Samantha had protested at first, she now understood why. You get one first impression with Nicholas Hale, Jonathan had said. Make sure it's unforgettable. The elevator chimed, and the doors slid open to reveal the top floor. The space was modern and immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline, minimalist leather furniture, and a curated display of abstract art. A tall man in a charcoal suit stood by the window, his back to her. When he turned, Samantha's breath caught, not because he was conventionally handsome, though he was, but because he carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. Miss Carrington, he said, his voice warm but precise, welcome. Thank you, Mr. Hale, she replied, extending her hand. Please, Nicholas, he said, taking it. His handshake was firm, his gaze steady. Jonathan speaks very highly of you, and I've been briefed on the recent events. His eyes flickered briefly, an acknowledgement of Blake's viral cruelty without directly naming it. Samantha sat across from him at the sleek walnut conference table. I suppose Jonathan told you I now hold controlling shares. He did, Nicholas said. And while I admit it's unconventional for a majority shareholder to have so little prior involvement, I also believe fresh perspectives are valuable, especially when they come with motivation. Her lips curved faintly. I have motivation, all right? Nicholas studied her for a long moment, as though weighing her resilience. You're not just here to sit on a board, are you? No, she said. I'm here to take back control of my life, and to make sure certain people regret thinking I was weak. A slow smile spread across his face. Good. Because I have an idea that might serve both our interests. He leaned forward, folding his hands. Carrington International is launching a new urban redevelopment project in the spring. High profile, media heavy, something that will be talked about for months. We need a public face for it. Someone fresh, someone the press will rally around. You, Samantha, could be that face, and in doing so, you'd be reintroducing yourself to the world, not as a humiliated ex-wife, but as a force in your own right. Her pulse quickened. You want me to go public? Not just public, Nicholas said. Commanding. We stage a formal introduction, press conference, photo ops, maybe even a feature in Forbes or Architectural Digest. You'll be associated with innovation, investment, and success. Samantha's mind raced, and if certain people happen to see those photos, they'll understand exactly what they lost, Nicholas finished, his tone sharpening. She pictured Blake scrolling through his feed, expecting to see her in the background of some friend's baby shower, and instead finding her on the cover of a magazine beside Nicholas Hale. The thought alone was worth a smile. But, Nicholas continued, this only works if you're comfortable stepping into the spotlight. It means cameras, questions, scrutiny. Samantha straightened her shoulders. After the last few weeks, I think I can handle it. Nicholas regarded her for a moment, then nodded. Good. In that case, let's make it official. I'd like you to attend the Winter Charity Gala with me next Friday. It's black tie, heavy media coverage, and it would signal to the business community and the tabloids that you are someone to watch. Her breath caught. You mean, walk in together? Exactly. Nicholas said, a united front, and if people speculate beyond business, let them. It will only add to the intrigue. She hesitated for a moment, then thought of Blake's post, the snide comments, the way Kelsey had giggled at her expense. If the universe was offering her a stage, she wasn't about to step off it. I'll do it, she said. Nicholas's smile was one of quiet satisfaction. I'll have my office send over the details. And Samantha? Yes. Make sure that dress is unforgettable. That afternoon, back in her apartment, Samantha opened her laptop and pulled up the online gallery of her maternity shoot. She stared at the same images Blake had mocked. The soft light, her serene smile, the gentle curve of her belly. She remembered how beautiful she'd felt that day, before his cruelty tried to rewrite the memory. Slowly, an idea began to take shape. She clicked over to a marketing agency's website, her fingers flying across the keyboard. A week wasn't much time, but with the right people, it could be enough. She didn't just want to walk into that gala looking like she'd won the lottery. She wanted the city to see her before she even arrived, and she knew exactly how to make that happen. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan. He likes you. That's good. He doesn't like many people. Samantha typed back. Good, because I have a plan. The following days were a blur of fittings, phone calls, and whispered strategy sessions. A renowned designer agreed to create a custom gown for her, a deep emerald silk that would complement her auburn hair and stand out in a sea of black and silver. She sat with a PR consultant to draft talking points in case any reporters asked about Blake. Deflect, but don't deny, the consultant advised. Let them connect the dots themselves. It's more powerful when they think they've discovered the story. By Thursday night, everything was in motion. Samantha's gown was ready. Her makeup artist had been booked. Nicholas's driver would pick her up at precisely 7:30 on gala night. And thanks to a rush order at the marketing agency, a 40-foot digital billboard would go live in the heart of downtown, featuring one of her maternity photos, unedited and glorious, alongside the words, "Strength is beautiful, Samantha Carrington." No tags, no explanation. Just her name, her face, and a quiet statement that would ripple through the city's gossip networks like wildfire. When she hit approve on the final Billboard mock-up, she felt something she hadn't in months: complete control. Friday was coming, and Blake Turner had no idea what was about to hit him. The night of the Winter Charity Gala arrived with the crisp bite of January air and the hum of anticipation. Chicago's elite were already gathering outside the Grand Marlowe Hotel, where crystal chandeliers would soon cast light over a ballroom dripping with opulence. But before the first champagne flute was lifted, the city had already begun buzzing. At 5 p.m., the 40-foot digital billboard on State Street lit up against the darkening sky. Samantha's maternity portrait, sunlight in her hair, her hands tenderly cradling her belly, dominated the screen. Beneath it, the words glowed in gold script. Strength is beautiful, Samantha Carrington. No company logo, no event tie-in, just her image, radiating calm defiance, towering above rush hour traffic. People stopped mid-step to take pictures. A local lifestyle blogger posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Who is Samantha Carrington and why do I want to be her?" By 6 p.m., the photo had been reposted hundreds of times. Someone tagged Blake Turner in a thread speculating if she was the same woman from that Facebook drama. He didn't respond, but Kelsey did, liking a comment that said, "Looks like she's trying too hard." Inside his condo, Blake scrolled through the growing chatter with a scowl. The name Carrington tugged at something in his memory. But before he could place it, a notification popped up. Chicago Chronicle, live coverage of the Winter Charity Gala. He tapped it, and there she was. Samantha stepped out of the black town car onto the gala's red carpet, the cold air brushing against the deep emerald silk of her gown. The dress flowed like liquid with each step, its off-shoulder neckline framing her collarbones, the fitted bodice accentuating her pregnancy in a way that was regal, not fragile. Flashes erupted instantly. Nicholas Hale emerged beside her, immaculate in a tailored tuxedo. He placed a hand lightly at the small of her back, guiding her forward with the ease of a man accustomed to commanding attention. Reporters shouted over each other, cameras clicking like a hailstorm. "Samantha, over here. Who are you wearing?" "Nicholas, is this your date for the evening?" "Miss Carrington, is this a new role at Carrington International?" Samantha answered only one question, her voice clear over the crowd. "Tonight is about supporting the Children's Literacy Fund. But yes, I'm proud to be taking a more active role in my family's legacy." Her family's legacy. The words rolled off her tongue with deliberate weight. Nicholas offered a brief nod to the photographers before steering her toward the entrance. Inside, the marble-floored lobby glittered with crystal sconces and the hum of polite conversation. Champagne was being poured into slender flutes, and a string quartet played softly near the grand staircase. At the far end of the room, Samantha spotted a familiar figure. Broad shoulders, the same confident stance that had once drawn her in like a magnet. Blake was there, wearing his best navy suit, Kelsey on his arm in a plunging silver gown. For a moment, the air seemed to still. Blake's eyes locked on her, narrowing slightly as recognition set in. Then his gaze flicked to Nicholas, then back to Samantha. He was already calculating. Kelsey's perfectly glossed smile faltered. She leaned toward him, whispering something that made his jaw tighten. But they couldn't look away. Not as Samantha and Nicholas moved effortlessly from greeting to greeting, each handshake and air kiss sealing the image of them as a power pair. Jonathan Pierce appeared at Samantha's side, his expression one of quiet triumph. "You've got the room," he murmured. "Feels like it," she replied, her own smile controlled but electric. The evening unfolded in a blur of introductions. Board members of the Literacy Fund praised her decision to get involved. Local news anchors angled for interviews. A city councilman hinted at a future partnership. Through it all, Samantha kept her composure, her hand occasionally resting on her belly in a gesture both natural and symbolic. But she was acutely aware of Blake. He hovered at the periphery, close enough to observe but far enough to avoid direct engagement. Finally, during a lull in the music, their paths crossed at the edge of the ballroom. "Samantha," he said, his tone clipped. "Blake." He gestured toward Nicholas, who was deep in conversation with a venture capitalist. "So that's the angle now? Date a billionaire to get back at me?" She tilted her head slightly. "I'm not dating a billionaire to get back at you, Blake. I'm standing next to a billionaire because I belong in the same room." His mouth pressed into a thin line. "You think a dress and a rich man make you untouchable?" "No," she said evenly. "I think my name on a 40-foot billboard downtown makes me unforgettable." For a flicker of a second, he faltered. She could see the question forming behind his eyes, the one he'd been avoiding all night. How did she afford that? Before he could speak again, Nicholas returned, offering Samantha a fresh glass of sparkling water. His presence made Blake instinctively step back, the power dynamic shifting without a single word. "Ready for the auction?" Nicholas asked. "More than ready," Samantha replied, her gaze still fixed on Blake. As she and Nicholas walked away, Blake stood rooted, his pride dented in a way no snide Facebook post could ever repair. By the time the gala ended, the hashtag Samantha Carrington was trending locally. Photos of her and Nicholas dominated Twitter feeds, often paired with side-by-side comparisons to the now infamous maternity shoot Blake had mocked. A popular gossip account summed it up perfectly. From thrift store dress to emerald goddess, Blake Turner fumbled hard. Riding back in the town car, Samantha glanced at her phone. Dozens of notifications flashed across the screen. Messages from old friends, DMs from strangers telling her she was an inspiration, and one from Jonathan. Phase 1, complete. Ready for Phase 2? She typed back, "Oh, I'm ready." Because tonight wasn't the end, it was the opening act. 2 mornings after the gala, the world looked different for Samantha. The city's largest lifestyle magazine ran a full-page photo of her and Nicholas on the red carpet under the headline, "Emerald Power, Samantha Carrington steps into the spotlight." The article called her a poised new force in Chicago philanthropy and noted her mysteriously fast ascent in the business world. It didn't mention Blake by name, but the subtext was clear to anyone who'd seen the viral maternity shoot drama online. Her phone buzzed nonstop. PR requests, event invitations, even a cautious email from a women's leadership group offering her a speaking slot. Meanwhile, Blake Turner was having a very different week. By Tuesday, 3 separate gossip blogs had dug into the Facebook post that started it all. Screenshots of his original caption mocking Samantha were now circulating with side-by-side comparisons to the Billboard, the gala photos, and the magazine cover. The comment sections were brutal. Imagine losing your wife and your dignity in the same year. He mocked her, and she turned it into a power move. Queen behavior. Kelsey who? Even people who didn't know Samantha were rallying to her side, framing the story as the ultimate "don't mess with a pregnant woman" lesson. Kelsey, who thrived on being adored online, found herself tagged in thousands of negative comments. She responded by posting a filtered selfie with the caption, "Haters gonna hate," but the likes were noticeably fewer than before. Blake, on the other hand, went quiet. Too quiet. Wednesday afternoon, Samantha was in a meeting at Carrington International's headquarters when Jonathan slid his phone across the conference table. "Thought you'd like to see this," he said. It was a link to a sports marketing news site, Blake's Industry. The headline read, "Turner Media drops out of major sponsorship deal amid PR controversy." The article explained that a national brand had quietly pulled out of negotiations with Blake's firm after concerns about recent online behavior by its founder. Samantha stared at the screen, then back at Jonathan. "You had nothing to do with this?" Jonathan's mouth curved into the faintest smile. "The world has eyes, Samantha. People don't like associating with petty men who publicly humiliate pregnant women. Actions have consequences." She allowed herself one deep breath of satisfaction before redirecting her focus. Let's talk about Phase 2. Phase 2 wasn't about Blake directly. It was about Samantha solidifying her own name so thoroughly that any attempt he made to smear her in the future would be laughable. The opportunity came faster than she expected. Nicholas approached her later that day with a proposal. The Literacy Foundation wants you to co-chair their spring gala. It's a big job, but it puts you at the helm of a $5 million fundraiser. The board agrees. It's the perfect next step for you. Samantha hesitated. That's only 3 months away. All the better, Nicholas said. The sooner you establish yourself in this space, the harder it will be for anyone to reduce you to someone's ex. She knew he was right. And part of her, maybe a bigger part than she admitted, relished the idea of Blake having to watch her lead one of the city's most prestigious charity events. "Let's do it," she said. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Samantha worked closely with the foundation's team, securing sponsors, designing the event theme, and coordinating with vendors. She appeared at luncheons, posed for press shots, and gave a brief but heartfelt interview on local television about the importance of children's literacy. Everywhere she went, whispers followed, "That's Samantha Carrington." Meanwhile, Blake's social media presence had dwindled to near silence. When he did post, the comments were flooded with references to Samantha's success and his loss. Even his loyal circle of networking buddies seemed to be keeping their distance, likely wary of being pulled into his PR quicksand. One evening, Samantha received an unexpected message from an unfamiliar number. "Blake, can we talk?" She stared at it for a long moment before replying. "About what?" "I want to apologize." The audacity made her laugh out loud. Months of silence, mockery, and smug cruelty, and now, when the tide had turned, he wanted to play the repentant ex. Apology accepted. No need to meet, she typed back. Then she blocked his number. By early March, Samantha's role as co-chair was official public knowledge. The foundation's promotional posters, featuring her in a crisp white suit, smiling beside a stack of children's books, were displayed in cafes, libraries, and boutique windows across the city. One evening, as she drove home from a planning session, she passed the State Street billboard. Her maternity portrait had been replaced by the new gala campaign image, but the gold script words still lingered in her mind. Strength is beautiful. It wasn't just a slogan anymore, it was her reality. But Blake wasn't finished. The morning after the new billboard went up, a gossip site published a grainy photo of him at a downtown bar, leaning close to a man known for feeding anonymous tips to tabloid reporters. Jonathan called her immediately. Looks like he's fishing for a counterstory. Don't be surprised if something surfaces soon. Samantha's jaw tightened. Let him try. I'm not the woman he thinks I am anymore. And she meant it. Because the old Samantha would have dreaded the next headline, feared the whispers, and hidden until it blew over. This Samantha had Nicholas Hale, Jonathan Pierce, an expanding network of powerful allies, and more importantly, her own voice. If Blake wanted a war, he'd have to face her on a battlefield she now controlled. By the end of the week, she was ready for whatever came next. Her name was in the right conversations. Her face was in the right places, and her resolve was unshakable. As she reviewed the gala's preliminary guest list, she noticed a name she hadn't expected, Blake Turner. She raised an eyebrow. He'd bought a ticket, she asked the event coordinator. Not just a ticket, the coordinator said. A front row table. Samantha smiled slowly. Perfect, let him come. Because she already knew, by the time the spring gala ended, Blake wouldn't just regret mocking her, he'd regret ever thinking he could win. The night of the Spring Literacy Gala arrived like the opening act of a Broadway premiere. The ballroom of the Grand Marlowe Hotel had been transformed into a literary dreamscape. Towering centerpieces of hardcover books, tables named after famous authors, and a stage framed by gold leaf arches. Samantha had been on her feet since dawn, overseeing final details. The navy silk gown she'd chosen was sleek and understated, but the diamond drop earrings, on loan from a jewelry sponsor, caught every light in the room. Nicholas arrived at her side minutes before the guests were let in, crisp in a black tuxedo. Nervous? He asked quietly. Focused, she replied, scanning the entrance where the city's most influential figures were beginning to file in. And then she saw him. Blake Turner. His navy suit was tailored to perfection, his hair immaculately styled, and Kelsey was on his arm in a scarlet gown cut to command attention. But Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. It had the tightness of a man who knew he was walking into someone else's domain. The evening began with cocktail hour. Samantha worked the room with Nicholas and Jonathan, greeting donors and introducing herself to newcomers. Everywhere she went, she felt Blake's gaze trailing her. When the dinner bell chimed, guests found their seats. True to the seating chart, Blake and Kelsey were positioned at a prime table near the stage, a table that also happened to include a Pulitzer-winning author, the CEO of a major publishing house, and two high-profile philanthropists. Samantha took the stage shortly after the first course, her heels clicking softly against the polished wood. The room quieted. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady, carrying across the tables. "Tonight isn't just about raising funds for literacy programs. It's about rewriting stories, our own, and those of the children who will one day change the world." Her speech wove seamlessly between the Foundation's mission and her own journey into public work. She spoke of her mother's dedication to education, of wanting to give her child a future filled with possibility. The applause at the end was warm, genuine. As she stepped down, Nicholas leaned in to murmur, "You've got them." Halfway through the evening, Jonathan approached with a discreet grin. "The press is here in force," he said. "And they're not here for Blake." True enough. Photographers kept circling back to Samantha's table, snapping shots of her in conversation with donors. The gala's social media feed lit up with her image, tagged with hashtag #rewrite the story. Blake, however, seemed restless. He laughed too loudly at jokes, gestured too broadly, and more than once his gaze flicked toward Samantha with something between frustration and disbelief. Then came the charity auction. One of the headline items was a week-long stay at a luxury villa in Tuscany, donated by Carrington International. When the bidding started, Samantha noticed Blake raise his paddle early, a smirk playing on his lips as if to say, "Watch me win." But he wasn't counting on Nicholas. The bids climbed. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Blake leaned back, clearly expecting the competition to fold. Then Nicholas raised his paddle again. $25,000. The room murmured. Blake countered at $27,000. Nicholas, calm as stone, went to $30,000. At $32,000, Blake hesitated. Kelsey whispered in his ear, but his expression soured. Nicholas raised to $35,000 without blinking. Blake's jaw flexed. He set his paddle down. The auctioneer's gavel fell. "Sold to Mr. Nicholas Hale," and polite applause filled the room. But Samantha caught the flash of humiliation in Blake's eyes. The final blow of the night, however, wasn't about outbidding him. It came during the closing slideshow, a highlight reel of the foundation's work, donors, and key supporters. Halfway through, a full-screen image of Samantha filled the projection screen. Not the maternity portrait, but a recent shot from the literacy program site visit, where she'd knelt beside a child, helping him sound out words from a picture book. The caption read, "Special thanks to co-chair Samantha Carrington for her leadership, dedication, and vision." The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was thunderous. Samantha smiled, acknowledging the crowd, then allowed her gaze to sweep briefly toward Blake's table. He was clapping, but the set of his jaw told the real story. As the gala wound down, Samantha found herself by the grand staircase with Nicholas and Jonathan. The donations total had surpassed $5.3 million, a record for the foundation. "You realize," Jonathan said, "that you've just cemented yourself as a fixture in the city's philanthropic circuit." "That was the point," she replied. Nicholas glanced toward Blake, who was lingering near the exit with Kelsey. "He's not enjoying himself." "Good," Samantha said simply. Later, in the quiet of her car ride home, Samantha checked her phone. Her inbox was flooded with praise from donors, requests for interviews, and a single message from an unknown number. "Enjoy your moment. It won't last." She deleted it without replying, because she knew something Blake didn't. Her moment wasn't ending. It was just evolving. The billboard, the gala, the press, those had been the opening moves. Phase 3 was already in motion. And by the time it was done, Blake wouldn't just be a man nursing his pride. He'd be a cautionary tale. A week after the spring gala, Samantha was back in her corner office at Carrington International, staring at a stack of proposals for a new community housing project. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bouncing off the gold lettering on her glass door. Samantha Carrington, majority shareholder. It still felt surreal, but the title was more than just a nameplate. It was armor. Nicholas knocked lightly before stepping inside. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. She set down her pen. "About what?" He placed a glossy event brochure on her desk. The cover showed the words Global Impact Forum, Annual Awards Gala, along with a list of high-profile attendees. Tech CEOs, Hollywood actors, even 2 former presidents. "This is in New York next month," Nicholas said. "Carrington International is one of the presenting sponsors. I'll be on stage, and I'd like you there with me." Samantha raised a brow. "As in, another gala date? As in, walking in together for the cameras and making it very clear you're more than just an investor in name," Nicholas replied. "This is a televised event. The audience will be massive." She leaned back in her chair. "And you think Blake will see it?" Nicholas's mouth curved. "I think the whole country will see it." Later that day, she met Jonathan for lunch at a discreet restaurant off Michigan Avenue. He listened as she relayed Nicholas's idea, his expression unreadable. "It's a good play," Jonathan finally said, "but if you want to make it bulletproof, you need to control the narrative before you even step foot in New York." "Meaning?" "Meaning you don't just show up with Nicholas Hale. You arrive with him in a way that dominates headlines before the event even starts." Samantha sipped her water slowly, her mind already spinning. "You're thinking press leak?" "Not a leak," Jonathan said. "A campaign, a carefully timed piece of publicity that frames you as more than just his date. Something that says, this woman is power, in her own right." She smiled faintly. "I might know exactly what to do." That evening, she called the creative director at the marketing agency that had handled her first billboard. "I want something bold," she told them. "Something that will stop people in their tracks again. But this time, it's not just about me. It's about me and Nicholas, and it has to feel iconic." They pitched ideas late into the night, but Samantha already had the seed of the concept. A black and white photo of her and Nicholas standing side by side in evening wear, looking like they owned the city. Not touching, not smiling, just two powerful figures, equal and unshakable. The tagline came to her in a flash: "Partnership redefined. Carrington International." 2 weeks later, Samantha and Nicholas stood in a private studio, the Chicago skyline visible through the tall windows. The photographer directed them into position, her in a tailored floor-length black gown, him in a sharp tuxedo. "Chin up, eyes forward," the photographer instructed. "Think legacy. Think unbreakable." When Samantha glanced at Nicholas between shots, he gave her a faint, approving nod. "You're good at this," he murmured. She smirked. "So are you." The final image was exactly what she'd envisioned: sleek, powerful, impossible to ignore. The campaign launched 3 days before the Global Impact Forum. The photo was plastered on digital billboards in Times Square, along the Kennedy Expressway, and most importantly, across from Blake's office building. Social media went into overdrive. Headlines appeared on lifestyle blogs and business sites alike. Who is Samantha Carrington, the woman beside billionaire Nicholas Hale? Power couple or power play? Carrington and Hale step into the spotlight. The comments were a mix of admiration, curiosity, and pure envy. People dissected every detail of her gown, his cufflinks, their body language. Blake, meanwhile, couldn't scroll through his feed without seeing their faces. The day of the New York Gala, Samantha woke to a text from her stylist. "The dress is ready. Wait until you see it." When she arrived at the penthouse suite Carrington International had rented for the weekend, the gown was waiting. Deep sapphire silk, cut to fit her like it was poured onto her body, with a sweeping train that would trail behind her like a shadow of authority. Nicholas arrived in his tuxedo precisely at 6 p.m., offering his arm with the easy grace of a man used to the spotlight. "You ready?" he asked. "More than ready," she replied. The black SUV pulled up to the gala entrance, where reporters lined both sides of the red carpet. As the door opened, camera flashes exploded like fireworks. Samantha stepped out first, the train of her gown spilling onto the carpet. Nicholas followed, placing his hand lightly at her back as they began the slow walk toward the main entrance. Questions flew from every direction. "Samantha, is this a personal or professional partnership?" "Nicholas, are you confirming the rumors?" "Miss Carrington, do you see yourself as a future CEO?" She answered with nothing more than a poised smile and a brief, "Tonight is about the work we're doing together." But the photographs told their own story. Two figures who looked like they belonged at the top because they were already there. Inside, Samantha kept her composure as she shook hands with senators, tech moguls, and entertainment icons. Yet she couldn't help noticing the notifications lighting up her phone. Jonathan had texted her a screenshot of a trending post. "Remember the guy who mocked his pregnant wife's photos? She's now walking the red carpet in New York with Nicholas Hale. That's what we call leveling up." She allowed herself one quiet laugh before sliding the phone back into her clutch. Because the final stage of her plan was just ahead. And Blake Turner had no idea what was about to be announced. The Global Impact Forum's awards gala was the kind of event that felt like it existed outside time. Polished marble floors, white-gloved servers weaving through clusters of world leaders, and a stage bathed in soft golden light. Every table was a constellation of influence. Senators chatting with tech billionaires, Oscar winners sipping champagne with NGO founders. Samantha and Nicholas were seated at the center table, directly facing the stage. Photographers still hovered nearby, snapping candid shots of them between speeches. Nicholas leaned toward her as the MC finished introducing the evening's keynote segment. "You ready?" She gave a calm nod, but inside her heart was steady for a different reason. Tonight wasn't about nerves. It was about precision. The keynote speaker wrapped up to warm applause, and then the MC returned to the microphone. "Please welcome to the stage the CEO of Carrington International, Mr. Nicholas Hale." Nicholas rose, buttoned his tuxedo jacket, and made his way up the steps. His presence commanded silence even before he spoke. "Good evening," he began. "Tonight we celebrate innovation, generosity, and the people who dare to shape the future. At Carrington International, we believe that leadership is about more than profit. It's about purpose. And with that in mind, I have an announcement to share." Samantha felt dozens of eyes shift toward her, as if the room already sensed she was about to be part of whatever came next. Nicholas continued, "It's my honor to introduce the new chair of Carrington International's Global Philanthropy Division, a role dedicated to advancing education, housing, and healthcare initiatives across the world. Leader, a visionary, and someone whose personal strength has inspired me and countless others. Please welcome Miss Samantha Carrington." For a heartbeat, the room was utterly still. And then applause erupted like a wave breaking. Samantha rose, the sapphire gown catching the light as she crossed the stage. Nicholas extended his hand to help her up the final step. The cameras went wild. She turned to face the audience, the applause still rolling. "Thank you," she began, her voice clear. "I'm honored to take on this role. My journey here wasn't simple, but it taught me the value of resilience. I believe that when you give people the tools to rewrite their story, you change not only their life, but the future for everyone they touch." More applause. Someone in the back shouted, "Go Samantha!" And the room chuckled warmly. Nicholas closed with, "We look forward to what she will accomplish." As they returned to their table, Samantha's phone, muted but vibrating, buzzed again and again. She glanced at the screen long enough to see her name climbing the trending charts. Headlines were already popping up online. Carrington International names Samantha Carrington to lead global philanthropy. Power play confirmed. Samantha Carrington steps into global role beside CEO Hale. Some posts paired the news with side-by-side images, her viral maternity photo next to tonight's stage shot. The captions told the story without spelling it out: transformation, triumph, poetic justice. Midway through dessert, Jonathan appeared beside their table. "I just came from the press pit," he said quietly. "Your announcement blew up every outlet's feed within minutes." Samantha smiled. "Good." Nicholas glanced at her. "You realize this cements you not just as my partner in the public eye, but as a major voice in global philanthropy?" "That's the point," she replied. Back in Chicago, Blake Turner was sitting at the bar of his favorite steakhouse when the televised gala coverage flickered across the big screen. He looked up just in time to see Samantha on stage beside Nicholas Hale, shaking hands with dignitaries. The caption along the bottom read, "Samantha Carrington named chair of Carrington International's Global Philanthropy Division." For a moment he didn't move. Then he let out a bitter laugh, earning a confused glance from Kelsey, who was scrolling through her phone beside him. "Something funny?" she asked. "Yeah," he said flatly. "She's really playing this game." Kelsey smirked without looking up. "Looks like she's winning it." After the speeches concluded, Samantha made her way through the crowd, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. The air buzzed with her name, her title, her presence. A journalist from a leading business magazine stopped her for a quick interview. "What message do you hope your appointment sends?" the reporter asked. Samantha met her gaze. "That your past doesn't define your potential, and that women don't have to stay quiet when they're underestimated. They can take the microphone instead." The line would be printed in bold font the next morning. As the night wound down, Nicholas offered to escort her back to the penthouse. They rode the elevator in comfortable silence until he said, "You know, tonight wasn't just a win for the company. It was a win for you personally. I think you've made it impossible for anyone to see you as anything less than formidable." She met his eyes. That was the idea. When the doors opened, the city lights glittered through the penthouse windows like a sea of possibilities. But Samantha wasn't looking at the view. She was already thinking about the next move, because this wasn't the endgame. Not yet. 2 weeks after the New York Gala, Samantha sat in her office with the city sprawling beneath her. The appointment as chair of Carrington International's Global Philanthropy Division had gone beyond headlines. It had transformed into a narrative. She wasn't just a woman who'd bounced back. She was the woman people cited in panel discussions about leadership and resilience. But there was one last thing she needed to do before she could consider this chapter closed. Jonathan knew it the moment he stepped into her office. "You're thinking about him again." Samantha didn't deny it. Not him, the lesson, and the fact that it's not complete until he understands it's permanent. Jonathan smiled faintly. "So, what's the plan?" She slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a mock-up of a new Billboard campaign. This one wasn't sleek black and white like the New York piece. It was vibrant, warm, and undeniably personal. Her and Nicholas standing together on a rooftop at sunset, his arm around her waist, her hand resting on his. The wind caught her hair just enough to make it cinematic. The tagline, in bold gold script, "Love, Loyalty, Legacy, Samantha Carrington and Nicholas Hale." And in smaller print at the bottom, Global Impact Forum Co-Chairs 2025. Jonathan chuckled. "And where do you plan to put this?" "Everywhere," she said, "but especially right outside Blake's office window." By the following Monday, installation crews were working before sunrise. The billboard was so close to Blake's building that he could see it from his desk without leaning forward. At exactly 9 a.m., the image went live. The first text Samantha received was from a former mutual friend. "Oh my God, he's losing it right now." By 9:15, she had confirmation, a photo of Blake standing at his office window, jaw clenched, staring at the larger-than-life image of Samantha and Nicholas with the words "Love, Loyalty, Legacy." Nicholas called her from the airport, his voice laced with amusement. "The billboard's up." "Oh, it's up," she said, "and it's already working." Across town, Blake tried to focus on his laptop, but every time he looked up, there it was. The woman he'd mocked, now looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine cover, standing beside a man who clearly valued her. It wasn't just the photo. It was the fact that she had used the very medium he once used to humiliate her, public display, to turn the tables completely. His phone buzzed with notifications, people tagging him in photos of the billboard. Others sending screenshots of articles about Samantha's new role, her work with Nicholas, her growing influence. Kelsey, scrolling beside him, muttered, "She really knows how to work a camera." Blake shot her a glare. "She's working more than a camera." That evening, Samantha attended a private reception for the city's top philanthropists. She knew Blake wouldn't be there, but the ripple effect of the billboard was already in the room. Conversations paused when she walked in. A local news anchor approached her for a live soundbite. "You've become something of a symbol for turning adversity into opportunity," the anchor said. "What do you say to people who feel stuck in the middle of their own hard chapters?" Samantha smiled. "I'd tell them that endings are often just beginnings you haven't recognized yet, and that the loudest way to answer someone who underestimates you is to live so well they can't ignore you." The clip aired that night, and within hours, it was trending with the hashtag Love, Loyalty, Legacy. The next morning, Blake woke up to find the hashtag still dominating his feed. Worse, one of his own clients had posted the billboard photo on their company page with the caption, "Inspired by this power couple and their commitment to making a difference." By Wednesday, another client had quietly canceled a meeting. No explanation, just a polite email rescheduling for a later date. Blake knew exactly what was happening. The Samantha narrative wasn't just overshadowing him, it was erasing him. Friday night, Samantha and Nicholas stood together at a charity dinner. A photographer asked for one quick shot against the backdrop of the event's floral arch. They obliged, and the image went viral before dessert was served. This time, Samantha didn't even have to push the story. It had momentum all on its own. People were rooting for her, celebrating her wins, sharing her quotes. She wasn't just the woman from that viral maternity photo anymore. She was an identity, a brand. And Blake? He was a footnote. Back at her penthouse later that night, Samantha stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Nicholas poured them each a glass of champagne. "You've made your point," he said, several times over. She took a sip, letting the bubbles linger. "Maybe. But this isn't just about him anymore. It's about every woman who's been told she's less because of her circumstances. If I've shown even one person that they can turn their story around, it's worth it." Nicholas raised his glass. "To rewriting the story." They clinked glasses, the sound crisp against the quiet hum of the city. Across the skyline, Blake's office building loomed, and just beyond it, towering over the street, her billboard glowed in the night. Unshakable, untouchable, undeniable. The final message was clear. She had not only survived him, she had surpassed him, and the world knew it. It was a crisp spring morning when Samantha stepped out of the penthouse balcony, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. The sun painted the Chicago skyline gold, and somewhere in the distance, her love, loyalty, legacy, Billboard still glowed against the waking city. She had expected the attention to fade by now. Most viral stories did. But this wasn't a 48-hour trend. It had become a movement. The hashtag Love Loyalty Legacy wasn't just about her anymore. Women across the country were using it to share their own comeback stories. Some were leaving toxic relationships. Others were launching businesses after years of doubt. A few had simply taken the leap to speak up for themselves at work. Samantha read every post she could, often tearing up at the raw courage they carried. Her phone buzzed with a call from Jonathan. "Morning, superstar," he said. "Your op-ed just went live in the New York Times, and the comment section is already full of women thanking you for putting into words what they've felt for years." She smiled faintly. "Good. That's the real win." Later that day, she met Nicholas in the boardroom for a quarterly review. Their dynamic had shifted since the early days. It was no longer mentor and newcomer. They were equals now, both driving the direction of Carrington International's philanthropic arm. As they reviewed funding reports, Nicholas glanced at her. "You've become the face of something much bigger than this company. You've built a platform most people would kill for. And I want to use it," she said simply. "Not just for gala speeches and photo ops. I want programs in every major city, literacy, housing, mentorship for women starting over. I want impact." Nicholas's lips curved in approval. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." That weekend, Samantha attended a women's leadership summit as the keynote speaker. The ballroom was packed. CEOs, students, community leaders, all gathered to hear her story. She didn't start with the gala or the billboards. She started with the night she sat alone on her kitchen floor, 8 months pregnant, scrolling through a Facebook post where the man she loved mocked her for the world to see. She spoke about the humiliation, the fear, and the quiet moment she decided that her story wasn't going to end there. "I'm not here to tell you it was easy," she said from the stage. "I'm here to tell you it was worth it, and that you have more power than you think, even in the moments you feel invisible." The applause was deafening. Some women were crying. Others were on their feet. After the summit, Samantha was approached by a young woman in her 20s, clutching a notebook. "I just wanted to thank you," the woman said, her voice trembling. "I left someone who treated me like I was nothing. I didn't think I'd survive on my own. But seeing your story, it made me believe I could." Samantha's throat tightened. She reached out, squeezing the woman's hand. "You already did the hardest part. The rest is just building your own ending." Meanwhile, Blake Turner had faded from public conversation almost entirely. His business had taken a hit from lost clients, his social media was nearly dormant, and Kelsey was conspicuously absent from his side in recent photos. It wasn't revenge in the petty sense. Samantha didn't need him ruined. The real victory was that she no longer thought about him with anger. He had become irrelevant to her life. On the first warm evening of the season, Samantha and Nicholas attended a small private dinner with the board of the Literacy Foundation. The event was held on the rooftop of a restored library, fairy lights strung overhead. As the city hummed below, Jonathan raised a glass. To Samantha, who reminded all of us that power isn't given, it's claimed. The toast earned a round of applause, but Samantha shook her head. "No, to everyone who decides to rewrite their story, no matter who told them they couldn't. That's the real legacy." Later, as she and Nicholas stood by the edge of the rooftop, he looked at her with a faint smile. "You know, I never asked, was the billboard outside Blake's office your idea or Jonathan's?" She smirked. "Mine. Every inch." He chuckled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "You'd have to try pretty hard," she said. They clinked glasses, the lights of the city stretching endlessly around them. The next morning, Samantha walked past a newsstand and caught sight of her own face on the cover of a national magazine. The headline read, "From Humiliation to Influence, How Samantha Carrington Changed the Game." She bought a copy, not out of vanity, but as a reminder. Because if someone had told her a year ago that she would be here, leading global initiatives, standing on stages, inspiring strangers, she would have laughed. But here she was. And the most powerful part wasn't the billboards or the titles. It was knowing she'd rewritten her ending on her own terms. That night, back at the penthouse, she stood at the balcony once more. The city lights blinked like quiet applause, the wind carrying the faint hum of traffic. Her phone buzzed with a notification from social media, a new post using love, loyalty, legacy. It was a photo of a woman holding her college acceptance letter, the caption reading, "Didn't think I'd make it here, but she reminded me I could." Samantha smiled, setting the phone down. The billboard would come down someday. The headlines would fade, but the impact, that would outlast everything. Because her story wasn't about proving something to Blake anymore. It was about proving something to herself and to anyone who needed to hear it. And that was a legacy no one could take away. So the story has ended, my wonderful friends. Are you still here with me until now? If you truly are, it means something in this journey has touched your heart. Maybe it's the reminder that no one can define your worth but you. As an old saying in heterodox wisdom goes, a scar is not a wound, it's proof you've healed stronger. If this touched you, I'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments so we can grow and heal together.